This video is going to be fairly short. It's in part an apology for our extended absence from posting YouTube videos and an explanation for why we're not further along with our RV lifestyle transition. Well, we had our plans. By this time, the RV home base should be complete, and we should be out on the road most of the time in our RV. Like I said, we had our plans. But not all plans work out as expected. And I think Mike Tyson fairly artfully summed it up when asked about a plan for his fight with Evander Holyfield. Said everybody has a plan until they get punched in the mouth. Well, this wasn't exactly a punch in the mouth, but it's certainly enough of a punch for us to have to alter our plans. It's been quite some time since our last post, so to start catching things up, in late 2021 we decided not to install the sheetrock ourselves and had a contractor put it up. As soon as the sheetrock was up on the walls, we called the heating and air contractors to come in and install the mini splits. At this point, the house was pretty much livable. Wasn't particularly nice, but it was livable. It was dried in. It had some plumbing, although not in the master bath, and had heat and air and lights and power. So at this point, we could use the home base to live in if we wanted to. You can see it's about Christmas time here. We stuck up a tall tree in the corner just to dress things up. We set up a bare bones sleeping arrangement in the guest bedroom and then began getting the guest bathroom ready for use. We put down flooring and then installed a toilet and vanity. Although the shower was not yet ready for use, we could at least go in and wash up and use the bathroom. Complicating the issue was Cheryl's old horse, Silly Girl. We lived in the middle of the woods. We had no pasture whatsoever. So when Cheryl was staying at the RV home base to be close to her father's facility, I had to be in the old house helping take care of the horse. This didn't really lead to us being able to get much done. We looked for ways to get rid of her, but she's an old horse, and we couldn't just give her away because people would be inheriting a bunch of old horse problems if they didn't know what they were getting into. I decided it was possible to set up some fencing at the new RV home base property, which is mostly pasture. I didn't want to buy a bunch of new fencing components, so I set out pulling up wire and T-post on the front part of our property. The old horse no longer used the area in the front part of the property, never came up past the foal barn, so I set out to take down the fencing and T-post on the front part of the property. First, I had to remove a good bit of barbed wire, taking the clips out and rolling the barbed wire up. After removing the barbed wire, I used this rig that we got on Amazon to help pull up the T-post using an old farm jack. You first slip the jig all the way down the T-post, hook the jig on the jack, and use the farm jack to jack up the post. Wasn't the easiest thing to do. Some of the posts came up quite easily, some of them were harder. Some of them were bent beyond use, but for the most part, it did a pretty good job. Now, after all the work of taking down the barbed wire and pulling up the T-post and transporting the T-post up to the new RV home base, Cheryl was able to get in contact with an old elementary school friend who now has a horse facility and has what she calls a geriatric pasture where she keeps older horses. It was bittersweet letting the old Palomino go. We knew we had to do it if we were going to set off on a traveling lifestyle. We wouldn't be able to take care of her, and we can still go see her. But once Silly Girl was seen to, and we were both able to be at the RV home base at the same time, we began working on the ceilings. Our idea was to use blue paneled roofing material for the ceilings. We bought a sheetrock lift to lift the panels up with to get them to the ceiling. We decided for the length of time we were going to have it that it would be cheaper just to buy it and sell it when we got through with it than it would be to try to rent it when it would be kind of an open-ended situation. Now on the arms that support the panel, we tape foam around the metal to keep from scratching up the blue panels. And here you can see we've lifted the panel into place. And then it's just a matter of using the blue screws that were provided by the manufacturer to screw them into the metal ceiling rafters. One of the more difficult parts of this process was the placement of the lights. We had to make an adjustment on almost every light, so that took a bit of time. Screwing the panels to the supports was a fairly easy process. After getting the lighting worked out, it was really a fairly simple process of getting the panels into place, putting them up on the lift and screwing them into place. Here you see the next panel up and ready to go, and then followed by the next panel and the next panel and so on. At this point we seemed to be cruising along, but it was about here where we hit a massive delay. When we reached this last little section off the living area in the hallway, Cheryl had to leave to go see to her father. I foolishly decided to put this up by myself. In fact, I did get it up by myself and decided it needed to be trimmed, so I took it back down. On the second time putting it up, I somehow lost control of the piece of metal, and trying to avoid getting cut on the metal, I slipped and fell off the ladder and severely broke my left leg. As a result of the fall, I broke my fibula and had a pylon fracture of the tibia. In other words, I shattered my tibia. They took me to the hospital. I stayed for 11 days. They needed to do surgery, but there was too much swelling, so they put an external fixation device on it to hold me together until they were able to get the swelling down enough to do the surgery that was required. To avoid all the stairs in our Georgia home, Cheryl had a adjustable bed that we had ordered delivered to the new RV home base, and we started to set up shop there. There wasn't anything I could do. I had to lay still, keep my foot elevated, and wait for the swelling to go down. After the 3 weeks, I was able to go in and get the surgery. Did it on an outpatient basis. Went in the morning and had it done, leaving these sutures. As you can see here, when I let my foot go down, the foot would flat turn purple. Lift it back up, and sooner or later the color would drain back out of it and I would get back to a normal color. There was nothing I could do but just sit there and keep my foot elevated. To make things livable, Cheryl put temporary flooring down in the master bath, put up temporary shower walls, and put in this toilet essentially by herself because there was little I could do to help her. We then installed this vanity and sink, which eventually will end up in the half bath. It was just the one that we had on hand, so she did a great job doing this. There was little I could do to help her, especially with the heavy toilet. It was beyond my capabilities at the time. These are x-rays of the original surgery where they put all the lovely screws and metal strapping into my leg. There were 10 weeks when I was off my feet, even longer time for me to recover and get to the point where I could go to physical therapy. I was starting to get my life back, and then disaster struck. The bone grafts that I had gotten during the surgery were not taking. They discovered that I had a bone infection. I spent from the week before Christmas until New Year's Eve in the hospital receiving heavy duty antibiotic infusions twice daily and keeping routine checks on my liver. I had another 6 weeks of oral antibiotics. When that didn't prove to be useful, I went through 8 weeks of daily antibiotic infusions. And finally, they had to go in after clearing up the bone infection and redo everything, take all of the metal out because it could prove to be an infection risk and redo it. This time they did things differently. Wasn't as much bone left to attach all the screws to, so they ended up putting a metal rod in my leg and fusing my ankle, driving the rod up through my heel, back up into the bone, and securing it. And then we started the whole recovery phase all over again. 10 weeks of not bearing any weight. This was followed by a period of physical therapy, and that essentially brings us up to where we are today. Now, here we are, 2 years out from a point where my impatience led to an event which greatly impacts our plans. My fall impacted us in several ways. First, physically. I have a titanium rod in my leg and my ankle is fused. I can no longer run, although I have found I can get a decent cardio workout using an elliptical. It impacts our hiking. I am slower, less agile, unable to cover as much ground as in the past. While this doesn't stop our hiking, I will be carrying a pair of hiking poles on any future trails. Due to my period of enforced inactivity, I put on about 30 pounds, and it needs to come off. I have started down that path. We'll see how well that works out. The next and probably greatest impact was logistically, how far it set us back in our plans. Due to my injury and the fact that the RV home base is all on one level and the old home was multi-level, we pretty much ended up moving into the RV home base before the interior was complete. And anybody who's done any kind of construction or renovation knows that living in the home you're working on really slows things down. My fall also impacted us in getting our old home on the market. It should have already been there. And we're just now getting it to the point where it's almost ready to go on the market. And I worry about how the markets are reacting these days. The next impact was to this YouTube channel. After the fall, in addition to my pain and immobility, I think I was depressed. I didn't have anything diagnosed, but many of the things that I did prior to the accident all seem to now be extremely tiring. The routine of publishing content seemed to weigh too heavy on me to get anything done. This video itself has been 90% complete for months and months, but every time I sat down to try to finalize it, I felt a sense of dread. Now that might not be 100% accurate description of the feeling, but I think it's the best way I can express it. Breaking the inertia of not getting anything done just seemed to be impossible. While we didn't produce content during this time period, we did collect video and still image documentation of things we did to complete the RV home base, mods to our RVs, and some of our travels. While the injury slowed us down, it hasn't stopped us. I guess what I'm saying is we're ready to start producing content again and to explain and apologize for our extended absence. We truly appreciate anybody who pays any kind of attention to our videos, especially those that give us feedback. Well, this video is run on far longer than I had originally intended, so I guess it's time to say goodbye and to tell you we're working to get the next video out. See you there. That's about it for this installment of RV Life in 3/4 time. Sorry for the extended absence. We're going to get more videos out, and as always, get out there and enjoy the ride.